Gather round the fire, friends. I've got a tale for you tonight that'll make your blood run cold. It's about a celebrity who thought he could erase his past, but his secrets came back to haunt him. You might know the guy, but after you hear this, you'll never look at him the same way again. So let me introduce you to the main character of our story, Mark Wahlberg. You might recognize him as the ripped Hollywood actor who's been in flicks like The Departed and Ted. With his chiseled jawline and bulging biceps, he looks every bit the action hero on the big screen. But before he was a big shot, Marky Mark, as he was known back then, was a troubled kid from the mean streets of Dorchester, Boston. Now, I'm not talking about your average teenage mischief here. Nah, Marky Mark was deep into some seriously dark stuff from a young age. By the shockingly young age of just 13, he'd already developed a raging cocaine habit and was abusing other substances too. Drugs were just the start of young Mark's troubles. He was also involved in the gang life of Boston, running with a rough crowd that struck fear into the hearts of locals. The Wahlberg family was known as a tough crowd that people steered clear of in the neighborhood. So with that kind of upbringing, it's no surprise that Mark found himself on the wrong side of the law more than once. And that's where our story takes a sinister turn down a path of hate and violence. In 1986, when Marky Mark was just 15 years old, he and his gang decided to go after a group of African-American kids who were on a school field trip to the beach. They chased these kids, pelting them with rocks and hurling vile racial slurs. One of the victims, just 12 years old at the time, recalled the terrifying experience, saying he was really scared and couldn't believe it was happening. The names, the rocks, the kids chasing. Thankfully, an EMT driver stepped in and stopped the attack before it could escalate further, but the emotional scars would last a lifetime for those poor kids, thanks to Marky Mark's despicable actions. But Mark wasn't done. The very next day, he and his buddies spotted one of the same kids they had attacked and went after him again, harassing and threatening the 12-year-old with more rocks and slurs. It's like they just couldn't get enough of tormenting these innocent children. And if that wasn't enough, 2 years later in 1988, Mark took his hate to a whole new level. This time, he attacked not one, but two Vietnamese men, beating them mercilessly with a wooden stick while high on the drug PCP. The first victim, Ton Lam, was just minding his own business, carrying a case of beer across the street, when Mark spotted him. Fueled by drugs and hate, Mark called him a vile racial slur and cracked that 5-foot-long wooden stick over the man's head, knocking him unconscious and splitting his head open. But Mark's rampage didn't stop there. He then turned his anger on a second victim, Johnny Trin, putting his arm around the man's shoulder in a seemingly friendly gesture. But as soon as a police car passed, Mark's true colors showed. He punched Johnny square in the eye, sending him crashing to the ground. When the cops finally caught up to Mark, he didn't even try to deny his actions. In fact, he boasted about it, proudly declaring, "I'll tell you now, that's the motherfucker whose head I split open." Chilling words from a violent, hate-filled teenage boy who clearly had no remorse for his actions. Now, I know what you're thinking. How could someone like that, with such a disturbing history of hate crimes and violence, become a beloved Hollywood star? Well, brace yourselves, because this story is about to take a twisted turn that'll make your stomach churn. Fast forward a few decades, and Mark Wahlberg is a household name, starring in hit movies and raking in millions. You'd think he'd want to leave his troubled past behind, right? But no way. Instead, he decided to bring it all crashing back into the spotlight in the most audacious way possible. It all started when the Black Lives Matter movement gained traction in 2020, following the tragic death of George Floyd. Mark, ever the optimist, posted his support for the movement on social media, but people weren't having it. They called him out for being a hypocrite, reminding everyone of his violent, racist past and the hate crimes he had committed against minorities. That's when Mark made a move that'll make your jaw drop. Instead of owning up to his actions or offering a sincere apology, he wrote a letter to the governor of Massachusetts asking for a pardon, a complete erasure of his hate crimes from his record. Can you believe the audacity of this guy? He claimed he had dedicated himself to being a better person, helping children and citizens, and that he should be rewarded for his good deeds by having his criminal record wiped clean. It's like he thought his celebrity status and wealth could just make all those hate crimes disappear into thin air. Now, some of Mark's victims have spoken out, sharing their pain and disbelief that he's trying to sweep his actions under the rug. Kristen Atwood, one of the 4th grade students Mark attacked on that fateful beach trip, said, "If you're a racist, you're always going to be racist. And for him to want to erase it, I think it's just wrong." Her sentiments have been echoed by advocacy groups like 18 Million Rising. They voiced their opposition in the pardon and gathered thousands of signatures, determined not to let Mark's past be whitewashed. But then there are those, like Johnny Trin, one of the Vietnamese men Mark attacked, who have shown forgiveness. Johnny believes that Mark has changed and deserves a second chance, or perhaps a 4th or 5th chance, given his track record. So what are we to make of this tangled web of violence, hate, and attempted redemption? Can someone with such a dark, hate-filled past ever truly atone for their actions? Or is Mark just another example of a powerful celebrity trying to rewrite history in his favor, using his wealth and influence to pressure the justice system into absolving him of his crimes?